You walk into a meeting room where tension hangs thick in the air. Two colleagues are locked in a heated disagreement, voices rising, faces flushed with frustration. Everyone else sits in uncomfortable silence, eyes darting between the combatants and their phones. Then someone enters the room. Not the boss, not the senior executive, just another team member. But something magical happens. Within minutes, the atmosphere shifts. The arguing stops, people lean forward, and suddenly everyone is working together toward a solution. What just happened there? Was it charisma, authority, or some kind of mysterious leadership gene? The answer is both simpler and more profound than you might think. That person wielded something that researchers now consider more powerful than raw intelligence, more valuable than technical expertise, and more predictive of success than any degree or certification. They demonstrated emotional intelligence in action. But here's what most people don't realize about emotional intelligence. It's not some fluffy, feel-good concept that belongs in self-help seminars. It's not about being nice all the time or suppressing your authentic emotions. And it's definitely not about manipulation or playing political games. Emotional intelligence is a measurable, learnable set of skills that literally rewires your brain. It changes how you think, how you relate to others, and how you navigate the complexities of human existence. The most successful CEOs, the most beloved teachers, the most effective parents, and the most influential leaders across every field share this common thread. They've mastered the art and science of understanding emotions, both their own and others. They've learned to harness the incredible power of human feeling rather than being controlled by it. Today, we're going on a journey together. We'll explore the fascinating world where neuroscience meets human connection, where brain chemistry influences life outcomes, and where ancient wisdom meets cutting-edge research. You're about to discover why some people seem to glide through social situations while others stumble. Why certain individuals bounce back from setbacks while others get stuck in cycles of frustration. Why some teams create magic together while others fall apart under pressure. This isn't just another topic to learn about. This is about understanding the invisible force that shapes every single day of your life. Every conversation you have, every decision you make, every relationship you build is influenced by your emotional intelligence. And the beautiful truth is that unlike your IQ, which remains relatively fixed throughout your life, your emotional intelligence can grow dramatically with the right knowledge and practice. Part 1. The Hidden Crisis Reshaping Our World. Let me share something with you that should stop you in your tracks. Right now, as we speak, humanity is experiencing an emotional crisis of unprecedented proportions. But it's not making headlines, it's not trending on social media, and most people are completely unaware it's happening. Yet it's affecting every workplace, every family, and every community on Earth. For the past 4 years in a row, researchers have documented a steady decline in global emotional intelligence scores. We're talking about a 5.5% drop from 2019 to 2023. Now, that might sound like just a number, but let me paint you a picture of what this actually means in real human terms. Imagine walking through an office building today compared to 20 years ago. You'd notice something different in the air. People are more on edge, more reactive, quicker to snap at small frustrations. They struggle to read the room, missing social cues that would have been obvious to previous generations. Conversations that should build bridges instead create walls. Teams that should collaborate effectively instead splinter into factions. The researchers who study this phenomenon have given it a name that perfectly captures what's happening. They call it an emotional recession. Just like an economic recession depletes financial resources, this emotional recession is depleting our collective ability to navigate feelings, connect meaningfully with others, and find purpose in our daily lives. But here's where it gets really concerning. People aren't just struggling with their own emotions anymore. They're losing the ability to understand and respond appropriately to the emotions of others. Empathy levels are dropping, compassion is becoming rarer, and the basic human skill of emotional attunement is deteriorating across entire populations. Think about your own workplace for a moment. Have you noticed more conflicts that seem to spiral out of control? More meetings where people talk past each other rather than truly communicating? More projects that fail not because of technical issues, but because team members couldn't work together effectively? You're witnessing the emotional recession in action. The data reveals something even more alarming. From 2021 to 2023, burnout increased in 65% of workplace sectors. This isn't just about people working longer hours or having heavier workloads. This is about human beings losing their capacity to manage stress, regulate their emotions, and maintain resilience in the face of challenges. Young people are being hit particularly hard. Generation Z faces what researchers describe as a mental and emotional health crisis, fueled by loneliness and social isolation. In workplace studies, more than half of Gen Z workers scored in the low satisfaction category, signaling especially high risk for disengagement and burnout. These are people just starting their careers, and they're already struggling with emotional overwhelm. But before you start feeling hopeless about all this, let me share the part of the research that gives me tremendous hope. The same scientists who documented this decline have also discovered something remarkable. The declines aren't happening equally across all groups. Some communities, some organizations, and some individuals are actually moving in the opposite direction. Their emotional intelligence scores are increasing, their well-being is improving, and they're developing greater resilience. What's the difference between those who are declining and those who are thriving? It comes down to one crucial factor. The people and groups that are succeeding have recognized that emotional intelligence is not a nice-to-have soft skill. They've understood that it's a fundamental life skill as important as reading, writing, or basic mathematics. They've made the conscious decision to develop these capabilities systematically. Here's what's particularly encouraging about this discovery. Emotional skills are completely measurable and entirely learnable. Unlike many aspects of intelligence that are relatively fixed, your emotional intelligence can grow throughout your entire lifetime. Your brain has the remarkable ability to create new neural pathways, strengthen existing connections, and literally rewire itself based on how you practice emotional skills. This means that no matter where you're starting from today, no matter what your background or previous experiences, you have the capacity to dramatically improve your emotional intelligence. You can become someone who navigates social situations with confidence and grace. You can develop the ability to stay calm under pressure, resolve conflicts effectively, and inspire others to do their best work. You can build deeper, more meaningful relationships and experience greater satisfaction in all areas of your life. The question isn't whether you can develop these skills. The research has definitively answered that question with a resounding yes. The real question is whether you'll choose to begin this journey of emotional development, whether you'll decide to be part of the solution to our collective emotional recession rather than another casualty of it. Part 2. Inside your emotional brain. Let me take you on a journey inside your own head. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's an incredible symphony of activity happening in your brain. Millions of neurons are firing, chemicals are flowing, and electrical signals are racing through pathways that have been millions of years in the making. But here's what's truly fascinating about the human brain when it comes to emotions. Your brain isn't just one unified computer processing information. It's more like a collection of different systems that evolved at different times in human history, and they don't always agree with each other. Understanding this internal conflict is the key to understanding why emotional intelligence matters so much. Deep in the center of your brain, you have what neuroscientists call the limbic system. This is your emotional brain, and it's ancient. When I say ancient, I mean this system was fully formed when your ancestors were living in caves, hunting mammoth, and trying to survive in a world full of predators. The limbic system includes structures with names like the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus. These aren't just abstract brain parts. They're the command centers that determine how you feel and react to everything around you. The amygdala, in particular, is like having a hypervigilant security guard inside your head. Its job is to scan everything you experience for potential threats and then sound the alarm when it finds something dangerous. But here's the problem with this ancient security system. It was designed for a world where threats were things like saber-toothed tigers and rival tribes. It wasn't designed for modern challenges like difficult conversations with your boss, financial stress, or relationship conflicts. So what happens when your amygdala detects what it perceives as a threat? It triggers what researchers call an amygdala hijack. Within milliseconds, your brain floods your system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense up, and your thinking brain essentially goes offline. This is why you might say things in heated moments that you later regret, or why you might freeze up when you need to perform under pressure. But evolution didn't stop with the limbic system. Over millions of years, humans developed something remarkable called the prefrontal cortex. This is your thinking brain, your rational mind, the part of you that can plan, reason, consider consequences and make thoughtful decisions. The prefrontal cortex is what separates humans from other animals in terms of our cognitive abilities. Here's where emotional intelligence comes into play. People with high emotional intelligence have learned to create better communication between their emotional brain and their thinking brain. They've developed the ability to recognize when their amygdala is getting activated, and they know how to engage their prefrontal cortex to regulate their emotional responses. It's like having a wise mediator who can step in when your ancient security guard starts overreacting to modern situations. But this isn't just theoretical. When neuroscientists put people with high emotional intelligence into brain scanners, they can actually see the difference. These individuals show more activity in their prefrontal cortex when dealing with emotional situations. They also show better connectivity between different brain regions, meaning their neural networks are literally more integrated and efficient. What's even more remarkable is that the brain areas responsible for understanding your own emotions are largely the same areas that help you understand other people's emotions. This means that when you get better at recognizing and managing your own feelings, you automatically become better at reading and responding to the feelings of others. It's like developing one superpower that actually gives you two distinct abilities. The implications of this brain science are profound. It means that emotional intelligence isn't some mysterious talent that people are either born with or without. It's a set of skills based on specific, trainable brain functions. Just like you can strengthen your muscles through exercise, you can strengthen these neural pathways through practice. Think about what this means for your daily life. Every time you choose to pause and reflect instead of reacting immediately, you're strengthening your prefrontal cortex. Every time you try to understand someone else's perspective, instead of just defending your own position, you're building neural connections that make empathy easier in the future. Every time you practice recognizing your own emotions and their triggers, you're giving your thinking brain more influence over your emotional responses. Part 3. Why your IQ isn't enough anymore. There's a story I want to share with you that completely changed how I think about intelligence. It's about two students who graduated from the same prestigious university with identical grades. Both were brilliant, both had impressive technical skills, and both landed jobs at top companies. Fast forward 20 years later, and their career paths couldn't be more different. The first student, let's call him Marcus, climbed the corporate ladder rapidly. He became a senior executive, leading teams of hundreds of people, making millions of dollars in deals, and earning the respect of colleagues and competitors alike. The second student, Sarah, struggled to keep jobs. Despite her obvious intelligence and technical competence, she found herself constantly in conflict with co-workers, passed over for promotions, and eventually relegated to roles far below her intellectual capabilities. What made the difference? It wasn't their IQ, which was virtually identical. It wasn't their technical knowledge, which came from the same classes and professors. It wasn't even their work ethic, as both were equally dedicated. The difference was in their ability to understand emotions, manage relationships, and navigate the complex social dynamics of professional life. This story illustrates something that researchers have discovered over the past few decades. IQ, the traditional measure of intelligence, only accounts for about 20% of success in life. The other 80%, that's where emotional intelligence comes in. Now, don't get me wrong, cognitive intelligence is important. You need a certain level of IQ to handle the technical aspects of most jobs, to solve complex problems, and to learn new information efficiently. Think of IQ as the entry-level requirement for most professional positions. It gets you in the door, but it doesn't determine whether you'll succeed once you're inside. Here's what's particularly interesting about this research. As you move up in organizations, technical skills become less important and people skills become more critical. At the entry level, your job might be 70% technical and 30% interpersonal. But by the time you reach senior leadership, those percentages flip completely. Success becomes 70% about managing relationships, inspiring teams, and navigating complex human dynamics. This shift explains why so many brilliant people plateau in their careers. They master the technical aspects of their field, but they never develop the emotional skills needed for leadership. They can analyze data beautifully, but they can't motivate a team. They can solve complex problems, but they can't resolve interpersonal conflicts. They can create innovative strategies, but they can't communicate those strategies in ways that inspire others to act. The world of work has fundamentally changed over the past few decades. Automation and artificial intelligence are rapidly taking over tasks that require pure cognitive processing. But machines can't replicate human emotional intelligence. They can't read the subtle cues in a client's voice that indicate concern. They can't sense the team dynamics that might derail a project. They can't provide the kind of leadership that helps people feel valued, motivated, and engaged. This is why emotional intelligence has become the ultimate competitive advantage in the modern economy. While artificial intelligence handles more and more of the analytical work, humans who can excel at emotional intelligence become increasingly valuable. They become the ones who can build trust with clients, lead diverse teams, adapt to change, and create the kind of workplace culture that drives innovation. But there's another crucial difference between IQ and emotional intelligence that most people don't realize. Your IQ is relatively fixed throughout your life. You're born with a certain cognitive capacity, and while you can learn new information and develop new skills, your basic intelligence level doesn't change dramatically. Emotional intelligence, on the other hand, can grow significantly throughout your entire lifetime. This means that no matter where you're starting from, you have the potential to dramatically improve your emotional capabilities. A person with average IQ but high emotional intelligence will typically outperform someone with high IQ but low emotional intelligence. They'll be more successful in their careers, happier in their relationships, and more resilient in the face of challenges. Consider the implications of this for your own life. If you've ever felt limited by your academic performance or worried that you're not the smartest person in the room, emotional intelligence offers a different path to success. If you've ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly build relationships while others struggle, the answer lies in emotional skills that can be learned and practiced. If you've ever seen someone with obvious talent fail to reach their potential, you're probably witnessing the consequences of underdeveloped emotional intelligence. The beautiful truth is that emotional intelligence democratizes success. It's not about where you went to school, what your grades were, or how you performed on standardized tests. It's about your willingness to develop skills that make you more effective at the fundamentally human aspects of life and work. And these skills are available to anyone who's willing to put in the effort to develop them. Part 4. The 4 pillars that change everything. Imagine emotional intelligence as a magnificent building that can transform your entire life. Like any strong structure, it needs a solid foundation and well-designed pillars to support everything else. The architect of our modern understanding of emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman, identified 4 essential pillars that form this life-changing structure. Understanding these pillars isn't just academic knowledge, it's practical wisdom that can revolutionize how you navigate every aspect of your existence. But before we dive into each pillar, I want you to understand something crucial. These aren't separate, independent skills that you can master one at a time and then move on. They're interconnected abilities that support and strengthen each other. Think of them like the instruments in an orchestra, each playing their part, but creating something beautiful only when they work together in harmony. The first pillar is self-awareness, and it's the foundation that everything else builds upon. Without self-awareness, the other 3 pillars simply cannot stand. This isn't just about knowing that you're feeling angry or sad or excited. True self-awareness means understanding the subtle nuances of your emotional landscape, recognizing your patterns and triggers, and seeing yourself clearly as others see you. Self-awareness includes your ability to recognize emotions as they arise, not after they've already taken control of your behavior. It means understanding your strengths and limitations with honest clarity. It involves being conscious of your values and what truly motivates you at the deepest level. Most importantly, it requires recognizing how your emotions, moods, and reactions affect other people around you. Here's what makes self-awareness so challenging. Most of us think we're much more self-aware than we actually are. Research shows that 95% of people believe they have good self-awareness, but only 10 to 15% actually demonstrate it when measured objectively. This massive gap between perception and reality explains why so many smart, talented people struggle with relationships and leadership. They simply don't see themselves the way others see them. The second pillar is self-management, which builds directly on self-awareness. Once you can recognize what you're feeling and why, the next challenge is learning how to manage those emotions effectively. Self-management isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about channeling your emotional energy in ways that serve your goals and relationships rather than sabotaging them. People with strong self-management skills can stay calm under pressure, adapt to changing circumstances, and maintain their performance even when facing significant stress. They don't let their emotions make decisions for them. Instead, they use their emotions as information, while letting their rational mind guide their actions. They can feel frustrated without lashing out, experience disappointment without giving up, and face uncertainty without becoming paralyzed. But self-management goes beyond just controlling negative emotions. It also involves actively cultivating positive emotional states that enhance your effectiveness. This means learning to generate optimism when facing challenges, maintaining motivation when progress is slow, and creating enthusiasm that's contagious to others around you. It's about becoming the kind of person who brings positive energy to every situation rather than draining it from others. The third pillar is social awareness, which shifts your focus from internal emotional intelligence to understanding the emotions of others. This involves developing your ability to read emotional cues, understand unspoken communication, and sense the underlying dynamics in social situations. Social awareness is what allows you to walk into a room and immediately sense the mood, recognize when someone is struggling even if they haven't said anything, and understand the politics and power dynamics in your organization. At the heart of social awareness is empathy, but not just the basic kind where you feel bad when someone else is hurting. We're talking about cognitive empathy, the ability to understand how others think and feel without necessarily sharing those emotions yourself. This skill allows you to see situations from multiple perspectives, anticipate how others will react to your words and actions, and tailor your communication style to what works best for each individual. Social awareness also includes organizational awareness, which is your ability to understand the complex web of relationships, influences, and informal power structures that exist in any group. This isn't about playing politics in a manipulative way. It's about understanding how things really get done, who the key influencers are, and how to navigate the social landscape effectively and authentically. The fourth and final pillar is relationship management, which brings together all the skills from the previous three pillars and applies them to building and maintaining strong connections with others. This is where emotional intelligence becomes most visible and most powerful. Relationship management encompasses your ability to communicate clearly, resolve conflicts constructively, influence others positively, and inspire people to work together toward common goals. People who excel at relationship management are the ones others naturally turn to for leadership, guidance, and support. They know how to have difficult conversations without damaging relationships. They can give feedback that helps people grow rather than making them defensive. They build trust quickly and maintain it over time. They create environments where others feel valued, understood, and motivated to do their best work. What's remarkable about these 4 pillars is how they create a multiplying effect. As you strengthen one area, it naturally supports growth in the others. Better self-awareness leads to improved self-management. Stronger self-management gives you the emotional stability needed for better social awareness. Enhanced social awareness provides the foundation for more effective relationship management. And successful relationship management in turn gives you more opportunities to practice and refine your self-awareness. Understanding these 4 pillars gives you a roadmap for developing your emotional intelligence systematically. Rather than trying to improve everything at once, you can focus on strengthening each pillar while recognizing how they support each other. This is the architecture of emotional mastery, and it's available to anyone willing to commit to the journey of growth. Part 5. Self-awareness, the foundation of everything. Let me tell you about a moment that changed my entire understanding of self-awareness. I was sitting in a coffee shop, observing a business meeting at the table next to me. One person was clearly becoming increasingly agitated, their voice rising, their gestures becoming more animated, their face flushing red. But here's what was fascinating. They seemed completely unaware of their own emotional state. They continued talking as if everything was normal, while everyone else at the table grew more and more uncomfortable. That's when it hit me. This person wasn't lacking intelligence, communication skills, or good intentions. They were lacking something far more fundamental, the ability to recognize their own emotional state in real time. They were experiencing a complete self-awareness breakdown, and it was sabotaging everything they were trying to accomplish. Self-awareness is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence, but it's also the most invisible and often the most neglected skill. You can't see someone's level of self-awareness from the outside, and most people dramatically overestimate their own abilities in this area. This creates a fascinating paradox. The people who most need to develop self-awareness are often the least likely to recognize that need. True self-awareness operates on multiple levels simultaneously. At the most basic level, it's your ability to recognize emotions as they arise in your body and mind. But this isn't as simple as it sounds. Emotions often begin as subtle physical sensations, a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, tension in your shoulders, or a change in your breathing pattern. Most people miss these early warning signals and only become aware of their emotions after they've escalated into strong feelings or behaviors they later regret. Developing this moment-to-moment emotional awareness is like training yourself to be an internal meteorologist. Just as a meteorologist can predict weather patterns by reading subtle changes in atmospheric conditions, you can learn to predict your emotional patterns by recognizing early signs. Maybe you notice that your jaw clenches when you're feeling overwhelmed. Perhaps your voice gets quieter when you're hurt, or your speech speeds up when you're anxious. These physical cues are your body's way of communicating emotional information before your conscious mind has fully processed what's happening. But self-awareness goes much deeper than just recognizing current emotions. It includes understanding your emotional patterns and triggers over time. What situations consistently challenge you? What types of people or interactions tend to bring out your best or worst qualities? When do you perform at your peak, and when do you struggle? This pattern recognition allows you to anticipate challenging situations and prepare for them rather than being blindsided repeatedly. There's also what researchers call metacognitive awareness, which is your ability to think about your own thinking. This involves recognizing when your emotions are influencing your judgment, when your mood is affecting your perception of events, and when your personal biases are shaping your interpretations. People with strong metacognitive awareness can step back from their immediate reactions and ask themselves questions like, am I seeing this situation clearly, or is my current emotional state coloring my perspective? Perhaps the most challenging aspect of self-awareness is seeing yourself as others see you. This requires what psychologists call external self-awareness, the ability to understand how your behavior affects other people. You might think you're being helpful when others perceive you as controlling. You might believe you're being thorough when others see you as indecisive. You might feel like you're showing passion when others interpret your behavior as aggression. The gap between how we see ourselves and how others see us is often enormous, and it's the source of countless misunderstandings and relationship difficulties. Research shows that people who actively seek feedback about their impact on others are more successful in leadership roles, have stronger relationships, and experience less stress in social situations. But seeking this kind of feedback requires courage, humility, and a genuine desire to grow rather than just to be right. Self-awareness also encompasses understanding your core values, motivations, and what gives your life meaning. Many people go through their entire lives without ever clearly articulating what they truly care about or what drives their decisions. They make choices based on external expectations, social pressure, or habit rather than authentic self-knowledge. But when you have clarity about your deepest values and motivations, decision-making becomes much simpler and your actions become more aligned with who you really are. Here's what makes self-awareness so powerful. It's the prerequisite for all other emotional intelligence skills. You can't manage emotions you don't recognize. You can't understand others if you don't understand yourself. You can't build authentic relationships if you're not clear about who you authentically are. Every other aspect of emotional development depends on this foundation of honest self-knowledge. But developing genuine self-awareness is also one of the most challenging personal growth journeys you can undertake. It requires facing uncomfortable truths about yourself, acknowledging your limitations and blind spots, and taking responsibility for your impact on others. It means being willing to discover that some of your self-perceptions might be inaccurate or incomplete. This is why many people unconsciously resist developing deeper self-awareness, even though they intellectually understand its importance. The good news is that self-awareness can be developed through specific practices and disciplines. Regular reflection, mindfulness meditation, journaling, seeking feedback from trusted sources, and working with coaches or therapists can all accelerate your self-awareness development. The key is approaching this work with curiosity rather than judgment, treating self-discovery as an ongoing adventure rather than a problem to be solved. Part 6. Self-management. Mastering your inner world. Picture this scenario with me. You're in an important meeting, presenting a project you've worked on for months. Suddenly, someone interrupts you and challenges your work with what feels like unfair criticism. Your heart starts racing, your face flushes with heat, and you feel a surge of anger rising in your chest. In this crucial moment, you have a choice that will determine not just the outcome of this meeting, but potentially the trajectory of your career. You can let that anger take control, respond defensively, and potentially damage relationships and your professional reputation. Or you can recognize what's happening in your body and mind, take a breath, and choose a response that serves your long-term goals, rather than your immediate emotional impulse. This is self-management in action, and it's the skill that separates emotionally intelligent people from everyone else. Self-management is where emotional intelligence moves from understanding to action. It's the bridge between knowing what you're feeling and choosing what to do about it. But here's what most people misunderstand about self-management. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. That approach actually backfires, creating internal tension and often leading to explosive emotional releases later. True self-management is about developing a healthy, productive relationship with your emotions. It means recognizing that emotions are information, not instructions. When you feel angry, that anger is telling you something important. Perhaps that a boundary has been crossed, a value has been violated, or an injustice has occurred. But the emotion itself doesn't dictate what action you should take. Self-management gives you the space between feeling and action, allowing you to choose your response consciously rather than reacting automatically. Let's explore what happens in your brain when you successfully manage a strong emotion. Remember that security guard we talked about earlier, the amygdala? When it detects a threat, it immediately starts flooding your system with stress hormones and preparing your body for fight, flight, or freeze responses. But your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, has the ability to send calming signals back to the amygdala. This is like having a wise supervisor who can tell the overeager security guard to calm down and assess the situation more carefully. The fascinating thing about this process is that it gets stronger with practice. Every time you successfully pause between stimulus and response, every time you choose reflection over reaction, you're literally building neural pathways that make self-management easier in the future. Your brain is remarkably plastic, meaning it can rewire itself based on how you consistently behave. This is why people who practice self-management techniques over time report that staying calm under pressure becomes almost automatic. Self-management has several crucial components that work together to give you mastery over your inner world. The first is emotional self-control, which is your ability to keep disruptive emotions and impulses in check. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally flat or robotic. It means learning to experience strong emotions without letting them hijack your behavior. You can feel deeply while still thinking clearly and acting wisely. The second component is adaptability, your ability to adjust to changing circumstances and unexpected challenges. Life is unpredictable, and rigid people who can't adapt to change often find themselves stressed, frustrated, and ineffective. Emotional adaptability means being able to let go of expectations when reality doesn't match your plans, finding opportunity in obstacles, and maintaining your effectiveness even when things don't go as expected. Achievement orientation is another crucial aspect of self-management. This is your ability to set meaningful goals and persist in pursuing them despite setbacks and obstacles. But this isn't just about grit or determination. Emotionally intelligent achievement orientation involves maintaining motivation through emotional ups and downs, celebrating progress along the way, and learning from failures without being derailed by them. Perhaps most importantly, self-management includes cultivating a positive outlook. This doesn't mean naive optimism or pretending that problems don't exist. It means developing the ability to see possibilities even in difficult situations, to focus on solutions rather than just problems, and to maintain hope and energy even when facing significant challenges. Research shows that people with genuinely positive outlooks are more resilient, more creative, and more successful in virtually every area of life. One of the most powerful self-management techniques is what psychologists call cognitive reframing. This involves learning to interpret events in ways that serve your well-being and effectiveness rather than undermining them. For example, instead of seeing a difficult co-worker as a source of stress, you might reframe them as an opportunity to practice patience and communication skills. Instead of viewing a setback as evidence of your inadequacy, you might see it as valuable feedback that will help you improve. But cognitive reframing isn't about lying to yourself or ignoring real problems. It's about choosing interpretations that empower you to take constructive action, rather than interpretations that leave you feeling helpless or victimized. This shift in perspective can be life-changing, transforming you from someone who feels at the mercy of circumstances into someone who feels capable of influencing your own experience. Physical self-management is also crucial and often overlooked. Your emotional state is intimately connected to your physical state. When you're tired, hungry, or physically stressed, your emotional regulation abilities decline significantly. People with strong self-management skills pay attention to their physical needs, maintain healthy habits, and recognize when their emotional reactions might be influenced by physical factors. The benefits of developing strong self-management skills extend far beyond just feeling better. People who can manage their emotions effectively are seen as more reliable, more trustworthy, and better suited for leadership roles. They create stability for others during times of uncertainty and change. They make better decisions because their judgment isn't clouded by unmanaged emotions. And they build stronger relationships because others feel safe and comfortable around them. Part 7. Social Awareness, Reading the Human Heart. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately sensed that something was wrong, even though no one had said anything? Maybe the conversation stopped a little too abruptly when you entered, or perhaps people's body language seemed tense despite their friendly words. That intuitive ability to read the emotional undercurrents in social situations is social awareness, and it's one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Social awareness is like having a sophisticated radar system that detects the emotional signals constantly being transmitted by everyone around you. These signals are everywhere, in facial expressions, tone of voice, body posture, energy levels, and the countless other subtle cues that humans use to communicate their inner states. Most of this communication happens below the level of conscious awareness, but people with high social awareness have learned to tune into these hidden channels. Think about the most socially gifted person you know. What makes them so effective in social situations? Chances are they have an uncanny ability to read people accurately. They seem to know intuitively when someone is upset, when someone needs encouragement, when someone is skeptical about an idea, or when someone is feeling left out of a conversation. This isn't magic or some mysterious intuition. It's a learnable skill based on paying attention to information that's always available but often ignored. At the heart of social awareness is empathy, but we need to be precise about what we mean by this term. There are actually different types of empathy, and understanding these distinctions is crucial for developing this skill effectively. Emotional empathy is when you actually feel what someone else is feeling, sharing their emotional experience. While this can create deep connection, it can also be overwhelming and make it difficult to help others effectively. Cognitive empathy, on the other hand, is the ability to understand what someone else is thinking and feeling without necessarily experiencing those emotions yourself. This is the type of empathy that's most useful for social awareness. It allows you to maintain your own emotional equilibrium while still understanding and responding appropriately to others' emotional states. You can recognize that someone is angry without becoming angry yourself, or understand that someone is anxious without taking on their anxiety. Developing cognitive empathy requires cultivating what researchers call perspective-taking ability. This means learning to step outside your own viewpoint and see situations through other people's eyes. What might seem like an unreasonable reaction from your perspective might make perfect sense when you understand someone else's background, pressures, fears, or priorities. This shift from judgment to understanding is often the key to resolving conflicts and building stronger relationships. But social awareness goes beyond just understanding individual emotions. It also includes organizational awareness, which is your ability to read the complex web of relationships, power dynamics, and unwritten rules that exist in any group setting. Every workplace, every family, every social group has its own unique culture and informal structure. People with high organizational awareness can quickly identify who the real decision-makers are, what the underlying tensions might be, and how to navigate the social landscape effectively. This isn't about playing politics in a manipulative way. It's about understanding how human systems actually work so you can contribute positively and achieve your goals authentically. For example, you might have the best idea in the world, but if you don't understand the organizational dynamics, you might present it to the wrong person at the wrong time or in the wrong way, and watch it get dismissed despite its merit. Social awareness also involves what psychologists call emotional contagion awareness. Emotions are literally contagious between human beings. When you're around someone who's excited and energetic, you tend to feel more energetic yourself. When you're in a room with someone who's anxious or depressed, you often start to feel those emotions too. Most people experience this emotional contagion unconsciously, but people with high social awareness recognize it happening and can manage its effects. Understanding emotional contagion gives you tremendous power to influence the emotional climate of any situation. When you walk into a tense meeting with calm confidence, you can help others feel calmer too. When you respond to someone's anger with genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness, you can help de-escalate the entire interaction. When you bring authentic enthusiasm to a project, you can inspire others to feel more engaged and motivated. One of the most important aspects of social awareness is learning to read nonverbal communication accurately. Research suggests that 55% of communication is body language, 38% is tone of voice, and only 7% is the actual words being spoken. This means that if you're only listening to words, you're missing 93% of the communication happening around you. Developing nonverbal reading skills requires paying attention to micro-expressions, subtle changes in posture, variations in vocal tone and pace, and the congruence or incongruence between someone's words and their body language. When someone says they're fine, but their shoulders are tense, their jaw is clenched, and their voice is strained, their body is telling you a different story than their words. People with high social awareness learn to notice and respond to these nonverbal signals. But here's an important caveat about reading nonverbal communication. Cultural differences play a huge role in how emotions are expressed and what various gestures and expressions mean. What might indicate respect in one culture could be seen as disrespect in another. Developing true social awareness requires cultural sensitivity and humility, recognizing that your interpretations of others' behavior are filtered through your own cultural lens. Perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of social awareness is service orientation, which is your ability to recognize and meet others' unspoken needs. This goes beyond basic empathy to actually anticipating what would be most helpful or supportive for someone in a given situation. It's about creating value for others by understanding not just what they're feeling, but what they truly need to be successful and fulfilled. Part 8. Relationship Management, the Art of Human Connection. Let me share a story about two managers who faced identical challenges but achieved completely different outcomes. Both inherited teams that were demoralized, unproductive, and plagued by interpersonal conflicts. Both were intelligent, experienced, and technically competent, but their approaches to managing relationships created entirely different results. The first manager, David, took a traditional command and control approach. He identified problems, issued directives, and expected compliance. When people didn't perform as expected, he applied more pressure. When conflicts arose, he made decisions from above and told people to deal with it. His team's performance improved slightly, but people remained disengaged, turnover was high, and the work environment felt tense and uninspiring. The second manager, Maria, took a relationship-centered approach. She spent time understanding each team member's perspectives, strengths, and motivations. She addressed conflicts by helping people understand each other rather than just imposing solutions. She connected individual goals to team objectives and helped people see how their work contributed to something meaningful. Within 6 months, her team had transformed into one of the highest-performing, most innovative groups in the organization. What made the difference? Maria had mastered relationship management, the fourth pillar of emotional intelligence. She understood that sustainable results don't come from managing tasks or processes, they come from managing the relationships between people. She knew that people's best efforts emerge not from fear or obligation, but from feeling valued, understood, and connected to something larger than themselves. Relationship management is where all the other aspects of emotional intelligence come together in practical action. It's where self-awareness, self-management, and social awareness translate into the ability to influence, inspire, and connect with others in meaningful ways. This isn't about manipulation or getting people to do what you want through emotional tactics. It's about creating authentic connections that benefit everyone involved. At the foundation of relationship management is the ability to communicate effectively. But effective communication goes far beyond just speaking clearly or writing well. It involves adapting your communication style to what works best for each individual person and situation. Some people need detailed information before they're comfortable making decisions. Others prefer big-picture concepts and get overwhelmed by too many details. Some people respond well to direct, assertive communication, while others need a gentler, more collaborative approach. People with strong relationship management skills develop what researchers call social flexibility. They can adjust their communication style, energy level, and approach based on what the situation requires and what works best for the people involved. This isn't being fake or manipulative, it's being genuinely responsive to others' needs and preferences. Just like you might speak differently to a child than to an adult, or use a different tone in a celebration than in a crisis. Social flexibility means matching your approach to what's most appropriate and effective. Another crucial component of relationship management is influence, but again we need to be precise about what we mean. Influence isn't about overpowering others or winning arguments through force of personality. True influence is about helping others see possibilities they might not have considered, inspiring them to want to achieve shared goals, and creating alignment between their interests and your objectives. This requires understanding what motivates different people and finding ways to connect your goals with their values and desires. Effective influence often involves what psychologists call principled persuasion. This means building your case on logic, evidence, and shared values rather than pressure, manipulation, or emotional coercion. You help others reach conclusions that serve both their interests and yours by providing information, asking thoughtful questions, and creating opportunities for them to discover insights themselves. This approach creates buy-in and commitment, rather than just compliance. Conflict management is another essential relationship management skill, and it's one that many people avoid or handle poorly. Conflict is inevitable whenever humans work or live together, but it doesn't have to be destructive. People with strong relationship management skills see conflict as an opportunity to understand different perspectives, solve problems creatively, and ultimately strengthen relationships through honest communication. Effective conflict management involves several key abilities. First, you need to stay emotionally regulated yourself, maintaining your composure even when others are upset or aggressive. Second, you need to help others feel heard and understood, acknowledging their concerns and perspectives even if you don't agree with them. Third, you need to separate people from problems, focusing on interests and solutions rather than personalities and positions. Finally, you need to guide conversations toward mutually beneficial outcomes rather than win-lose scenarios. Leadership is perhaps the most visible aspect of relationship management, but leadership in the emotional intelligence context is different from traditional command and control models. Emotionally intelligent leadership is about inspiring and enabling others to achieve their best rather than just directing their behavior. It involves creating vision and meaning that connects with people's deeper motivations. It requires building trust through authenticity, competence, and genuine care for others' well-being. Great leaders understand that their primary job is to create conditions where others can succeed. They develop people's capabilities, provide support and resources, remove obstacles, and celebrate achievements. They understand that leadership is not about being the smartest person in the room, but about bringing out the best in everyone else. This requires emotional intelligence because it's fundamentally about understanding and working with human nature rather than against it. Teamwork is another crucial relationship management competency that's become increasingly important in our interconnected world. Very few significant achievements happen in isolation anymore. Success typically requires the ability to collaborate effectively with diverse groups of people, often across different departments, organizations, or even cultures. This requires skills in building rapport, establishing trust, managing group dynamics, and helping teams work through challenges together. Perhaps most importantly, relationship management involves what researchers call inspirational leadership. This is your ability to create enthusiasm and commitment by connecting with people's emotions, values, and aspirations. Inspirational leaders help others see possibilities they might not have imagined, feel capable of achieving things they thought were beyond their reach, and want to contribute to something meaningful and worthwhile. This kind of leadership doesn't come from position or authority. It comes from your ability to connect authentically with the human heart. Part 9. The Great Workplace Revolution. Something extraordinary is happening in workplaces around the world, and it's changing everything we thought we knew about professional success. For decades, the corporate world operated on a simple premise: hire smart people, give them clear tasks, and reward performance with money and promotions. But this model is crumbling, and it's being replaced by something entirely different. We're witnessing the rise of the emotionally intelligent workplace, and it's revolutionizing how business gets done. The numbers tell a compelling story that every professional needs to understand. 71% of employers now value emotional intelligence over technical skills when evaluating candidates. Let that sink in for a moment. The majority of employers would rather hire someone with high emotional intelligence and moderate technical skills than someone with exceptional technical abilities but low emotional intelligence. Why this dramatic shift? Because business leaders have discovered something that researchers have been documenting for years. Emotional intelligence is the strongest predictor of workplace performance. Among 34 essential workplace skills, emotional intelligence explains 58% of success across all job types. That means your ability to understand and manage emotions is more important for your career success than your technical expertise, your educational background, or even your raw intelligence. The financial impact of this shift is staggering. People with high emotional intelligence earn an average of $29,000 more per year than those with low emotional intelligence. For every 1 percentage point increase in your emotional intelligence, you can expect to add approximately $1,300 to your annual salary. But the benefits go far beyond individual compensation. Organizations that prioritize emotional intelligence are seeing remarkable results across every metric that matters. Teams with emotionally intelligent leadership show higher productivity, better collaboration, increased innovation, and significantly lower turnover rates. Companies with emotionally intelligent cultures report higher employee engagement, better customer satisfaction, and improved financial performance. This isn't just feel-good psychology. This is hard business data that's reshaping corporate priorities worldwide. But why is emotional intelligence becoming so crucial in the modern workplace? The answer lies in fundamental changes to how work gets done. Automation and artificial intelligence are rapidly taking over routine tasks, analytical processes, and even complex problem-solving in many areas. What machines cannot replicate, however, are the uniquely human capabilities that emotional intelligence represents. Machines can process data, but they can't read the subtle concern in a client's voice during a phone call. They can analyze spreadsheets, but they can't sense when a team is losing motivation or when interpersonal tensions are threatening a project. They can execute predetermined processes, but they can't adapt their communication style to what works best for each individual customer or colleague. They can follow programmed responses, but they can't provide the kind of inspirational leadership that helps people persevere through difficult challenges. This shift means that as artificial intelligence handles more of the analytical work, humans who excel at emotional intelligence become increasingly valuable. They become the bridge between technological capability and human need. They're the ones who can take the output from sophisticated algorithms and translate it into actionable insights that resonate with real people. They're the ones who can lead diverse teams through complex changes, build trust with skeptical stakeholders, and create the kind of workplace culture that attracts and retains top talent. The rise of remote and hybrid work has made emotional intelligence even more critical. When people aren't physically in the same space, the subtle cues that help us understand each other become much harder to read. Video calls can't fully capture body language, spontaneous conversations become scheduled meetings, and the informal interactions that build relationships happen much less frequently. In this environment, people with high emotional intelligence have a tremendous advantage because they're better at creating connection and understanding even with limited information. Generational differences in the workplace are also driving demand for emotional intelligence. Younger employees have different expectations about work relationships, feedback and purpose than previous generations. They want managers who understand them as individuals, who can provide meaningful mentorship, and who can connect their daily tasks to larger organizational goals. Traditional command and control management styles that might have worked with previous generations often fail completely with younger workers. The research on generational differences reveals some fascinating patterns. Generation Z, in particular, faces significant challenges with emotional regulation and interpersonal relationships, partly due to growing up in an increasingly digital world. More than half of Gen Z workers score in the low satisfaction category in workplace studies, indicating high risk for disengagement and burnout. But here's what's interesting. When these young employees work for emotionally intelligent managers, their engagement and performance improve dramatically. Gender dynamics are also playing a role in the emotional intelligence revolution. Research shows that women's emotional intelligence scores have been rebounding faster than men's in recent years, giving them advantages in many workplace situations. However, this creates both opportunities and challenges, as women with high emotional intelligence may find themselves taking on disproportionate amounts of emotional labor in their organizations. The key is creating workplace cultures where emotional intelligence is valued and developed across all employees, regardless of gender. The shift towards emotional intelligence is also being driven by increasing workplace complexity and pace of change. Organizations today face constant disruption from technology, global competition, changing customer expectations, and evolving regulatory environments. In this context, technical skills become outdated quickly, but emotional intelligence skills become more valuable over time. The ability to adapt to change, learn from failure, build relationships across diverse groups, and maintain performance under pressure becomes essential for organizational survival. Perhaps most importantly, the workplace emotional intelligence revolution is being driven by a growing understanding of human nature itself. We're learning that people don't just want jobs, they want meaning, connection, growth, and the opportunity to contribute to something larger than themselves. Organizations that can provide these deeper forms of satisfaction through emotionally intelligent leadership and culture have enormous advantages in attracting and retaining the best talent. They create environments where people don't just work for a paycheck, but where they're genuinely engaged and committed to shared success. Part 10. The Neuroscience of Human Connection. Deep inside your brain, something remarkable happens every time you interact with another human being. Networks of specialized neurons light up, chemical messengers flood your system, and your brain literally synchronizes with the brains of people around you. This isn't poetry or metaphor, it's measurable neuroscience that's revolutionizing our understanding of human connection and empathy. Scientists have discovered that when you watch someone else experience an emotion, specific neurons in your brain, called mirror neurons, fire as if you were having that experience yourself. If you see someone smile, neurons associated with smiling activate in your own brain. If you watch someone recoil in pain, neurons associated with pain responses become active in your neural networks. Your brain literally mirrors the experiences of others, creating a neurological foundation for empathy and emotional connection. But the neuroscience of empathy goes even deeper than mirror neurons. Researchers have identified brain networks that are specifically dedicated to understanding the mental and emotional states of other people. These networks include areas like the medial prefrontal cortex, the temporal parietal junction, and parts of the superior temporal sulcus. When these areas are active, you're essentially running sophisticated simulations in your mind about what other people might be thinking and feeling. What's particularly fascinating is that the brain circuits responsible for understanding others overlap significantly with the circuits responsible for understanding yourself. The same neural networks that help you reflect on your own thoughts and emotions also help you understand the thoughts and emotions of others. This means that developing self-awareness literally enhances your ability to understand other people and vice versa. It's a neurological explanation for why the 4 pillars of emotional intelligence are so interconnected. Research has also revealed something called neural synchrony, which is the tendency for people's brain waves to align when they're engaged in meaningful interaction. When you're having a deep conversation with someone, when you're collaborating effectively on a project, or when you're sharing an emotional experience, your brains actually start oscillating in similar patterns. This synchronization appears to be associated with better communication, increased trust, and stronger feelings of connection between people. The implications of neural synchrony are profound for understanding relationships and teamwork. It suggests that high-quality human connection isn't just something we experience subjectively. It's something that creates measurable changes in brain function. Teams that develop strong emotional connections may literally think more similarly, communicate more effectively, and collaborate more seamlessly because their brains are more synchronized. Neuroscientists have also discovered that empathy and emotional understanding activate the brain's reward systems. When you successfully understand someone else's perspective or provide emotional support that helps them feel better, your brain releases neurochemicals like dopamine and oxytocin that create feelings of satisfaction and pleasure. This means that humans are neurologically wired to find empathy and connection rewarding. We literally feel good when we understand and help others, which explains why emotionally intelligent behavior tends to be self-reinforcing. But here's where the neuroscience gets really interesting for practical applications. These empathy and connection networks in the brain can be strengthened through practice, just like physical muscles can be strengthened through exercise. Studies have shown that people who engage in empathy training, mindfulness meditation, or other emotional intelligence practices show measurable increases in grey matter density in brain areas associated with emotional understanding and regulation. The research on neuroplasticity and emotional intelligence offers tremendous hope for human development. It means that no matter what your starting point, no matter how your brain developed during childhood, you have the capacity to strengthen your emotional intelligence throughout your entire life. Your brain can literally rewire itself to become better at understanding emotions, managing relationships, and connecting with others. The key is engaging in practices that activate and strengthen these neural networks consistently over time. Stress has a particularly important relationship with these empathy and connection networks. When you're highly stressed, when your amygdala is overactive, or when you're in survival mode, the brain areas responsible for empathy and social understanding become less active. This is why people often become less considerate, less collaborative, and more self-focused when they're under significant pressure. It's not a character flaw. It's a neurological response that prioritizes immediate survival over social connection. Understanding this stress-empathy connection has practical implications for creating emotionally intelligent environments. Organizations and relationships that consistently operate in high-stress crisis mode will naturally see decreases in empathy, collaboration, and emotional intelligence. Conversely, environments that manage stress effectively and create psychological safety allow people's natural empathy and connection abilities to flourish. This is why emotionally intelligent cultures tend to be more productive, innovative, and sustainable over time. The neuroscience research also reveals important information about emotional contagion. The mirror neuron systems that help us understand others also make us susceptible to unconsciously absorbing the emotions of people around us. When you're around someone who's anxious, your brain may start activating anxiety-related neural patterns, even if you have no logical reason to be anxious yourself. This emotional contagion happens automatically and largely outside conscious awareness. But here's the powerful part. People with high emotional intelligence can learn to influence this process consciously. By maintaining your own emotional regulation, by projecting calm confidence even in challenging situations, you can literally help regulate the emotional states of others through these mirror neuron mechanisms. This is one of the neurological foundations of emotional leadership. Your emotional state doesn't just affect you, it influences the brain states and emotional experiences of everyone around you. Perhaps most remarkably, neuroscience research suggests that the capacity for empathy and emotional connection is one of the defining characteristics of human consciousness itself. The networks in your brain that allow you to understand others' mental states are closely related to the networks that create your sense of self and your ability to think about thinking. Emotional intelligence isn't just a useful skill, it's part of what makes us uniquely human. And the more we understand about how these systems work, the better we can become at developing and using these remarkable capabilities. Part 11. The invisible force that shapes every room. Have you ever noticed how one person's mood can transform an entire group? Maybe you've experienced walking into a room where someone is radiating positive energy, and suddenly everyone feels more optimistic and engaged. Or perhaps you've been in meetings where one person's negativity or anxiety seemed to spread like wildfire, leaving everyone feeling drained and discouraged. This isn't coincidence or imagination. It's a powerful psychological phenomenon called emotional contagion, and it's shaping your life in ways you probably never realized. Emotional contagion is the unconscious process by which we absorb and mirror the emotions of people around us. It happens automatically, below the level of conscious awareness, through multiple channels including facial expressions, voice tone, body posture, and even subtle physiological changes like breathing patterns and heart rate. Your brain is constantly scanning the emotional signals of others and adjusting your own emotional state to match what it perceives. This process served important survival functions for our ancestors, but in modern environments it can either enhance or undermine your effectiveness, depending on how well you understand and manage it. The research on emotional contagion reveals just how powerful this phenomenon really is. Studies show that people can catch emotions from others within milliseconds of exposure, often before they're consciously aware of what the other person is feeling. In workplace settings, researchers have documented how a single person's emotional state can influence entire team dynamics, productivity levels, and decision-making processes. The emotions of leaders have particularly strong contagion effects, rippling through organizations and affecting hundreds or even thousands of people. But emotional contagion isn't just about negative emotions spreading through groups. Positive emotions are actually more contagious than negative ones under the right conditions. When someone genuinely embodies enthusiasm, confidence, or joy, these emotions can inspire and energize everyone around them. This is why certain people seem to light up every room they enter, why some leaders can motivate teams to achieve extraordinary results, and why positive workplace cultures tend to be self-reinforcing. Understanding emotional contagion gives you tremendous power to influence your environment positively. When you walk into a stressful situation with calm confidence, you're not just managing your own emotions, you're helping to regulate the emotions of everyone around you. When you respond to someone's anger with genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness, you can help de-escalate their emotional state through contagion effects. When you bring authentic enthusiasm to a project or relationship, you can inspire others to feel more engaged and motivated. This influence works through several mechanisms that researchers have identified. Facial mimicry is one of the most immediate channels of emotional contagion. When you see someone smile, micro-muscles in your own face automatically begin to mirror that expression, which then sends signals to your brain that can shift your emotional state toward happiness. Conversely, when you maintain a calm, confident facial expression in a tense situation, others may unconsciously mirror that expression and begin to feel calmer themselves. Vocal contagion is another powerful mechanism. The tone, pace, and rhythm of your voice carry emotional information that others absorb unconsciously. When you speak with warmth and enthusiasm, you're literally transmitting those emotional qualities to your listeners. When you maintain a steady, calm tone under pressure, you can help others feel more stable and grounded. This is why great speakers and leaders pay so much attention to how they use their voice, not just what words they say. Postural contagion affects how people feel about themselves and their capabilities. Research shows that when you maintain confident, open body language, it not only affects how others perceive you, but it can actually influence how confident they feel. Conversely, closed defensive postures can make others feel more guarded and negative. Your physical presence is constantly broadcasting emotional information that shapes the feelings and behaviors of everyone around you. But emotional contagion can also work against you if you're not aware of it. If you're highly susceptible to absorbing others' negative emotions, you might find yourself feeling drained, anxious or frustrated after spending time with certain people, even when nothing obviously negative happened. Some people are naturally more sensitive to emotional contagion than others, and highly empathetic individuals sometimes struggle with emotional overwhelm because they absorb so much from their environment. Learning to manage your susceptibility to emotional contagion is a crucial emotional intelligence skill. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally closed off or insensitive to others. It means developing the ability to recognize when you're absorbing emotions from your environment and choosing consciously how much to let those emotions influence your own state. You can be aware of what others are feeling without necessarily taking on those feelings yourself. One of the most powerful applications of emotional contagion is in parenting and education. Research following families across 3 generations found that empathetic parents raise more empathetic children, who then become empathetic parents themselves. The emotional patterns and responses that children absorb from their parents through contagion effects ripple out into the world, affecting how they treat friends, colleagues, and eventually their own children. This means that developing your own emotional intelligence isn't just a personal improvement project, it's a contribution to the emotional health of future generations. In organizational settings, understanding emotional contagion is essential for anyone in a leadership role. Whether you hold a formal leadership position or not, if people look to you for guidance, stability, or direction, your emotional state is constantly influencing others. This creates both tremendous responsibility and tremendous opportunity. By consciously managing your own emotional state and projecting the qualities you want to see in others, you can help create the kind of environment where everyone can do their best work. The key to using emotional contagion positively is authenticity. Trying to fake positive emotions or manipulate others through artificial emotional displays typically backfires because people can sense the incongruence, even if they can't consciously identify what feels wrong. Genuine emotional regulation and authentic positive emotions, on the other hand, are powerfully contagious in positive ways. This is why developing real emotional intelligence is so much more effective than just learning to put on a good performance. Part 12. The Hidden Cost of Emotional Blindness. Let me tell you about a brilliant engineer named Michael whose story illustrates one of the most expensive problems in the modern workplace. Michael had an IQ of 150, advanced degrees from prestigious universities, and technical skills that his colleagues described as exceptional. On paper, he was the perfect employee. In reality, he was a career catastrophe waiting to happen, and the cost of his emotional blindness extended far beyond his own professional struggles. Michael's problems weren't obvious at first. He consistently delivered high-quality technical work, met his deadlines, and could solve complex problems that stumped other engineers. But over time, a pattern emerged that his managers couldn't ignore. Projects that Michael worked on frequently went over budget, not because of technical issues, but because of team conflicts, communication breakdowns, and client relationship problems. Michael couldn't read social cues, so he would interrupt clients during important presentations, dismissing their concerns as technically uninformed. He couldn't manage his own frustration, so he would become visibly agitated when non-technical colleagues asked questions he considered basic. He couldn't understand others' perspectives, so he would design elegant solutions that completely missed what users actually needed. Most importantly, He couldn't see how his behavior affected others, so he never recognized that he was the common factor in all these interpersonal failures. The financial cost of Michael's low emotional intelligence was staggering. His last project, which should have taken 6 months and cost $200,000, stretched to 14 months and cost nearly $500,000. The client relationship became so strained that they cancelled future contracts worth over $2 million. 3 talented team members requested transfers to other departments, creating recruitment and training costs for their replacements. The company's reputation suffered, leading to missed opportunities that may have been worth millions more. Michael's story isn't unique. Research shows that low emotional intelligence creates measurable costs in virtually every type of organization. These costs show up in reduced productivity, increased turnover, damaged client relationships, failed projects, workplace conflicts, and missed opportunities for innovation and growth. What makes these costs particularly insidious is that they're often invisible to the people causing them and difficult to measure precisely. The productivity costs of low emotional intelligence are enormous but rarely tracked directly. When someone can't regulate their emotions effectively, they waste time and energy on interpersonal drama instead of focused work. When they can't read social situations accurately, they pursue dead-end strategies and alienate potential supporters. When they can't manage relationships skillfully, they spend countless hours dealing with conflicts that could have been prevented or resolved quickly with better emotional skills. Turnover costs related to emotional intelligence are particularly devastating because they're often concentrated among the most talented employees. High performers typically have options, and they rarely tolerate working for managers or colleagues with low emotional intelligence for long. When these valuable employees leave, they take their knowledge, relationships, and potential contributions with them. The cost of replacing them includes recruitment expenses, training time, lost productivity during the transition, and the opportunity cost of what they might have accomplished if they had stayed. But the costs go beyond just individual performance problems. Low emotional intelligence creates what researchers call toxic work environments that systematically undermine everyone's effectiveness. When people feel unsafe, unheard, or undervalued because of poor emotional leadership, they naturally become more defensive, less collaborative, and more likely to withhold their best efforts. Innovation suffers because people stop taking risks or sharing creative ideas. Customer service deteriorates because employees can't provide genuine care and attention when they're emotionally depleted themselves. The health costs associated with low emotional intelligence are also significant, though they're often overlooked in business contexts. Chronic workplace stress caused by poor emotional management leads to increased sick days, higher healthcare costs, and reduced cognitive performance. People working in emotionally toxic environments show higher rates of anxiety, depression, cardiovascular problems, and other stress-related health issues. These health impacts create additional costs through increased insurance premiums, disability claims, and reduced workforce capability. Customer relationships suffer tremendously when businesses employ people with low emotional intelligence in client-facing roles. A single, negative interaction with an emotionally unskilled employee can destroy years of relationship building and result in lost revenue that far exceeds that person's salary. In service industries particularly, emotional intelligence often matters more than technical competence because customers make decisions based primarily on how they feel about their interactions with company representatives. The opportunity costs of low emotional intelligence may be the highest costs of all, though they're the hardest to measure. When teams can't collaborate effectively because of poor emotional skills, they miss opportunities to create breakthrough innovations. When leaders can't inspire and motivate their people, organizations fail to achieve their potential. When companies can't build strong relationships with partners, suppliers and stakeholders, they lose access to resources and opportunities that could transform their business. Perhaps most tragically, low emotional intelligence often becomes self-perpetuating. People who lack emotional skills tend to create environments that discourage emotional intelligence in others. They hire people who won't challenge them emotionally, promote people who share their emotional blind spots, and create cultures where emotional skills are seen as weakness or irrelevance. This creates organizations that become systematically less capable of handling the human aspects of business, making them increasingly vulnerable in a world where human connection and emotional intelligence are becoming more valuable. The personal costs of low emotional intelligence extend far beyond professional consequences. People who struggle with emotional skills often have difficulty maintaining close relationships, experience higher levels of stress and anxiety, and miss out on the deep satisfaction that comes from meaningful human connection. They may achieve technical success, but find themselves isolated, misunderstood, and ultimately unfulfilled. Their children may struggle with emotional development, perpetuating patterns of emotional dysfunction across generations. But here's the hopeful part of this story. Unlike many other performance problems, emotional intelligence deficits can be addressed at any point in someone's career or life. The costs of low emotional intelligence are high, but they're not permanent consequences. With awareness, commitment, and proper development, people can dramatically improve their emotional skills and transform both their personal and professional effectiveness. The question is whether individuals and organizations will recognize the true cost of emotional blindness and make the investment necessary to develop these crucial capabilities. Part 13. The Gender and Generation Divide. Something fascinating is happening in our emotional landscape that most people haven't noticed yet. While overall emotional intelligence scores have been declining globally, the decline isn't affecting everyone equally. There are significant differences emerging between men and women, between different generations, and between different cultural groups. Understanding these patterns isn't just academic curiosity, it's essential information for anyone who wants to navigate modern relationships and workplaces effectively. Let's start with the gender dynamics, which reveal some surprising trends. For most of human history, cultural stereotypes suggested that women were more emotional while men were more rational. But when researchers actually measure emotional intelligence scientifically, they find a more complex and interesting picture. Women do tend to score higher on certain aspects of emotional intelligence, particularly empathy, social awareness, and interpersonal skills. However, men often score higher on emotional self-control and stress management. What's particularly interesting is how these gender patterns have been changing over time. Starting in 2021, women's emotional intelligence scores began rebounding from their pandemic lows, while men's scores continued to decline. 75% of women's life success factor scores showed improvement, even as men's emotional intelligence continued to deteriorate. This divergence is creating new dynamics in workplaces and relationships that many people are still learning to navigate. But we need to be careful about how we interpret these gender differences. Individual variation within each gender is far greater than the average differences between genders. There are many men with exceptional emotional intelligence and many women who struggle with emotional skills. Cultural expectations and social conditioning play huge roles in how people develop and express emotional intelligence. What we're seeing in the research may reflect learned behaviours and social pressures as much as any inherent differences. The workplace implications of these gender trends are significant. As emotional intelligence becomes more valued in professional settings, women may find new advantages in leadership and career advancement. However, this can also create unfair expectations that women should handle all the emotional labour in organisations, from managing team conflicts to providing emotional support for colleagues. The goal should be developing emotional intelligence across all employees, not just relying on one gender to carry the emotional burden for everyone. Generational differences in emotional intelligence are even more dramatic than gender differences. Generation Z, those born after 1997, face what researchers describe as a mental and emotional health crisis fueled by loneliness and social isolation. In workplace studies, more than half of Gen Z workers scored in the low satisfaction category, indicating high risk for disengagement and burnout. This generation grew up with smartphones, social media and digital communication as their primary social tools, which may have limited their development of face-to-face emotional skills. The challenges facing Generation Z are particularly concerning because they're just entering their peak career-building years. If more than half of young workers are struggling with emotional intelligence and workplace satisfaction, this represents a massive talent management crisis for organizations worldwide. Traditional management approaches that worked with previous generations often fail completely with Gen Z employees who have different expectations about feedback, recognition, work-life balance and purpose. But Generation Z also brings unique strengths to the emotional intelligence conversation. They tend to be more open about mental health struggles, more accepting of therapy and emotional development, and more willing to prioritize well-being over traditional markers of success. They're also more diverse and inclusive in their thinking, bringing fresh perspectives to workplace relationships and cultural dynamics. The key is helping them develop the interpersonal skills they may have missed while growing up in an increasingly digital world. Millennials, who are now in their prime career years, show different emotional intelligence patterns than both Gen Z and older generations. They tend to value authenticity, transparency and meaningful relationships more than previous generations did at the same age. However, they also face unique stressors, including financial pressures, career uncertainty and the challenge of balancing work with family responsibilities. Their emotional intelligence development has been shaped by economic recessions, technological disruption, and changing social norms in ways that create both opportunities and challenges. Generation X and baby boomers tend to score higher on certain aspects of emotional intelligence, particularly emotional self-control and stress management. They developed their emotional skills in environments that emphasized face-to-face communication, long-term relationship building, and traditional workplace hierarchies. However, they sometimes struggle with the more open, collaborative and emotionally expressive styles that younger generations prefer. Successful organizations are learning to blend the emotional wisdom of older workers with the fresh perspectives of younger employees. Cultural differences add another layer of complexity to emotional intelligence patterns. Different cultures have varying norms about emotional expression, conflict resolution, relationship building, and leadership styles. What's considered emotionally intelligent behavior in one culture might be seen as inappropriate or ineffective in another. As workplaces become more globally connected and culturally diverse, developing cultural emotional intelligence becomes crucial for success. These demographic differences create both challenges and opportunities for developing emotional intelligence. On the challenge side, people from different genders, generations and cultures may have difficulty understanding each other's emotional styles and communication preferences. Miscommunication and conflict can arise when people interpret others' behavior through their own cultural and generational lenses. What seems like emotional intelligence to one group might appear as weakness, manipulation, or inappropriateness to another. But these differences also create tremendous opportunities for learning and growth. When people from different backgrounds work together effectively, they can learn from each other's emotional strengths and develop more sophisticated, nuanced emotional intelligence. Diverse teams often outperform homogeneous ones precisely because they bring different emotional perspectives and skills to challenges. The key is creating environments where these differences are seen as assets rather than obstacles. The implications for organizations are clear. One-size-fits-all approaches to emotional intelligence development won't work in diverse, multi-generational workplaces. Instead, companies need sophisticated strategies that recognize different starting points, learning styles, and cultural contexts while still building common emotional skills and understanding. This requires leaders who can adapt their emotional approaches to what works best for each individual, while maintaining consistent standards and expectations for everyone. Part 14. Building your emotional fitness. Think of emotional intelligence like physical fitness. Just as you can strengthen your muscles, improve your cardiovascular health, and increase your flexibility through regular exercise, you can develop your emotional capabilities through consistent practice. And just like physical fitness, emotional fitness requires understanding the right techniques, maintaining regular discipline, and gradually increasing the challenge as your abilities improve. The beautiful truth is that your brain remains changeable throughout your entire life, which means you can always get emotionally stronger, no matter where you're starting from. The first step in building emotional fitness is developing accurate self-awareness, and this begins with learning to tune into your body's emotional signals. Your body is constantly giving you information about your emotional state, but most people have learned to ignore or suppress these signals. Start paying attention to physical sensations like tension in your shoulders, changes in your breathing, feelings in your stomach, or shifts in your energy level. These bodily cues often provide earlier and more accurate information about your emotions than your conscious thoughts do. Create a daily emotional check-in practice. Set reminders on your phone to pause 3 times a day and simply ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And what might be causing this feeling? Don't try to change or fix anything initially, just practice noticing and naming your emotional states. This simple practice of emotional labeling has been shown to reduce the intensity of negative emotions and increase your sense of control over your internal experience. Journaling is one of the most powerful tools for developing emotional self-awareness. But this isn't about writing Dear Diary entries about your day. Focus on specific emotional experiences, what triggered certain feelings, how you responded, what the outcomes were, and what patterns you notice over time. Ask yourself questions like, when do I feel most confident and capable? What situations consistently challenge me emotionally? How do different people affect my emotional state? What are my early warning signs when I'm becoming overwhelmed or stressed? Building emotional self-management requires developing what psychologists call the pause muscle. This is your ability to create space between feeling an emotion and acting on it. When you notice a strong emotional reaction beginning, practice taking 3 deep breaths before responding. This simple technique gives your prefrontal cortex time to come online and provide input to your emotional brain. Over time, this pause becomes automatic, giving you much greater choice in how you respond to challenging situations. Learn to reframe situations in ways that serve your effectiveness rather than undermining it. When something frustrating happens, practice asking yourself, how else could I interpret this situation? What opportunities might be hidden in this challenge? What can I learn from this experience? How might this ultimately serve my long-term goals? This isn't about positive thinking or denial, it's about choosing interpretations that empower you to take constructive action. Developing social awareness starts with becoming a more careful observer of human behavior. Practice watching people's facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, and energy levels. Try to notice incongruences between what people are saying and how they're saying it. Pay attention to group dynamics, who speaks first, who others look to for guidance, how decisions really get made, and what the unspoken rules seem to be. Active listening is perhaps the most important social awareness skill you can develop. Most people listen just enough to formulate their response. But true listening means trying to understand the other person's perspective completely before focusing on your reply. Practice reflecting back what you hear. So what I'm understanding is that you feel frustrated because the project timeline seems unrealistic, is that right? This simple technique not only improves your understanding but also helps others feel heard and valued. Empathy can be strengthened through perspective-taking exercises. When you're in conflict with someone or struggling to understand their behavior, try this mental exercise. If I were in their shoes, with their background, pressures and constraints, how might I see this situation? What might be motivating their actions that I'm not considering? What fears or concerns might be driving their behavior? This practice doesn't mean you have to agree with everyone, but it helps you respond more skillfully to different perspectives. Building relationship management skills requires practicing specific techniques for different types of interactions. For giving feedback, learn to focus on behaviors and outcomes rather than personality traits. Instead of saying you're always disorganized, try when deadlines are missed. It affects the whole team's ability to deliver on time. For managing conflicts, practice separating people from problems and focusing on shared interests rather than competing positions. Influence skills can be developed by learning to connect your goals with others' values and motivations. Before trying to persuade someone, ask yourself, what does this person care about most? How can I present my idea in terms that resonate with their priorities? What questions can I ask that might help them reach conclusions themselves rather than feeling pressured by my agenda? Practice emotional regulation techniques that work for your specific triggers and stress patterns. Some people benefit from physical movement like walking or stretching when emotions run high. Others find breathing exercises, brief meditation, or positive self-talk more effective. Experiment with different approaches and build a toolkit of techniques you can use in various situations. Seek feedback regularly from people who know you well and interact with you in different contexts. Ask specific questions. How do I come across when I'm stressed? What's one thing I could do differently to be more effective in team meetings? When do you see me at my emotional best, and what's different about those times? This external perspective is crucial for developing accurate self-awareness and identifying blind spots. Remember that building emotional fitness is a lifelong journey, not a destination. Like physical fitness, your emotional capabilities will atrophy if you don't continue practicing and challenging yourself. But also like physical fitness, small consistent efforts compound over time to create dramatic improvements in your capabilities and quality of life. The key is approaching this development with patience, curiosity and self-compassion rather than self-criticism and unrealistic expectations. Part 15. The Ripple Effect Revolution. Imagine dropping a stone into a perfectly still pond and watching the ripples spread outward in ever-widening circles. This is what happens when you develop emotional intelligence, except the ripples don't stop at the water's edge. They spread through your relationships, your workplace, your family, and ultimately throughout your entire community. Understanding this ripple effect is crucial because it reveals why emotional intelligence isn't just a personal development tool. It's a force for transforming the world around you. The first ripple starts with your immediate relationships. When you become more emotionally aware and skilled, the people closest to you experience the difference immediately. Your spouse or partner notices that you listen more carefully, respond less defensively, and handle stress more gracefully. Your children observe that you're more patient, more present, and better at helping them navigate their own emotional challenges. Your close friends find that you're more supportive, more understanding, and more enjoyable to be around. But these changes in your closest relationships create secondary ripples. When your family relationships improve, your children develop better emotional skills that they carry into their friendships and school relationships. When your marriage or partnership becomes more emotionally intelligent, you both have more energy and positivity to bring to other relationships. When your friendships deepen, you become part of a more supportive and emotionally healthy social network. The workplace ripples are particularly powerful because they affect so many people simultaneously. When you develop better emotional intelligence at work, your colleagues notice that meetings run more smoothly when you're involved, conflicts get resolved more quickly, and projects tend to be more successful. Your improved emotional skills make everyone around you more effective, which creates a positive feedback loop that encourages others to develop their own emotional capabilities. Research shows that when one person in a team significantly improves their emotional intelligence, it often catalyzes improvement across the entire group. This happens through multiple mechanisms, modeling better behavior, creating psychological safety for others to be more open, resolving tensions that were draining everyone's energy, and inspiring others to develop their own emotional skills. Teams that experience this kind of emotional transformation often see dramatic improvements in productivity, creativity, and job satisfaction. The leadership ripples are especially profound. When someone in a leadership position develops higher emotional intelligence, the effects cascade throughout their entire sphere of influence. They create environments where people feel valued, understood, and motivated to do their best work. They model emotional skills that others naturally absorb and emulate. They make decisions that consider the human impact, not just the technical or financial aspects of situations. But you don't need to hold a formal leadership position to create leadership ripples. Anyone can become an informal emotional leader by consistently demonstrating high emotional intelligence in their interactions with others. When you remain calm in crisis situations, other people feel calmer too. When you respond to others' anger with empathy rather than defensiveness, you help de-escalate tensions. When you celebrate others' successes genuinely, you contribute to a more positive and supportive culture. The generational ripples may be the most important of all. Parents with high emotional intelligence raise children who are more emotionally skilled, resilient, and capable of forming healthy relationships. These children carry these abilities into their adult lives, their careers, and eventually their own parenting. Research following families across multiple generations shows that empathy and emotional intelligence patterns persist and amplify over time. This means that developing your emotional intelligence isn't just improving your own life, it's contributing to the emotional health of future generations. The community ripples extend your influence far beyond your immediate personal and professional circles. When you bring emotional intelligence to community organizations, volunteer activities, or civic engagement, you help create more effective and harmonious group dynamics. When you model emotional skills in public interactions, from customer service encounters to neighborhood relationships, you contribute to a more civil and connected society. Educational ripples are particularly powerful for creating long-term social change. Teachers with high emotional intelligence create classroom environments where students feel safe, supported, and engaged in learning. These students not only perform better academically, but they also develop better social and emotional skills that serve them throughout their lives. When educational institutions prioritize emotional intelligence development, they're literally shaping the emotional capabilities of entire generations. The organizational ripples from emotional intelligence can transform entire companies and industries. Organizations that prioritize emotional intelligence in hiring, promotion, and development decisions create cultures that attract and retain top talent. These cultures tend to be more innovative, more adaptable, and more successful over time. As these organizations succeed, they influence industry standards and expectations, creating pressure for competitors to develop similar emotional capabilities. Perhaps most importantly, the cultural ripples from widespread emotional intelligence development could address some of society's most pressing challenges. Many of our current problems, from political polarization to workplace dysfunction to family breakdown, stem at least partly from collective deficits in emotional intelligence. As more individuals develop these skills, we create the foundation for more empathetic, collaborative, and effective approaches to solving complex social problems. The exponential nature of these ripples means that your personal emotional intelligence development has far greater impact than you might realize. Every interaction you have with improved emotional skills potentially influences that person's emotional state and capabilities. They then carry that influence into their other relationships, multiplying your positive impact throughout networks of people you may never meet. Over time, these ripples can reach thousands or even millions of people, creating changes that extend far beyond what any individual could achieve directly. This ripple effect perspective transforms emotional intelligence from a nice-to-have personal skill into a moral imperative. In a world facing unprecedented challenges that require unprecedented levels of human cooperation and understanding, developing your emotional intelligence becomes a contribution to the collective well-being of humanity. Every step you take toward greater emotional awareness, regulation and connection makes the world a little bit more emotionally intelligent. And in a world that desperately needs more wisdom in how we handle emotions and relationships, that contribution matters more than you might ever know. Part 16. Emotional Intelligence in the Digital Age. We're living through the most dramatic shift in human communication since the invention of written language. In just 2 decades, we've moved from primarily face-to-face interactions to spending much of our social and professional lives communicating through screens, text messages, and digital platforms. This technological revolution has created unprecedented opportunities for connection and collaboration, but it's also fundamentally challenging our ability to develop and maintain emotional intelligence. Understanding how to preserve and enhance emotional intelligence in a digital world may be one of the most crucial skills of the 21st century. Think about what we lose when we communicate primarily through digital channels. In face-to-face conversation, you receive a constant stream of emotional information through facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, energy levels, and subtle physiological cues like breathing patterns and micro-expressions. When you're texting or emailing, 93% of this emotional communication simply disappears. You're left with words on a screen, and words alone are notoriously poor at conveying emotional nuance and intent. This loss of emotional information creates what researchers call digital communication ambiguity. Without vocal tone, facial expressions, and body language, people frequently misinterpret the emotional content of digital messages. A brief email that was intended to be efficient might be perceived as rude or dismissive. A text message meant to be casual might seem cold or uncaring. A social media post intended as humor might be interpreted as criticism or judgment. These misunderstandings can damage relationships and create conflicts that would never have occurred in face-to-face communication. The rise of remote and hybrid work has made digital emotional intelligence a critical professional skill. When team members are scattered across different locations and time zones, the informal conversations that traditionally built relationships and trust become much less frequent. Managers must learn to read emotional cues through video calls, where much of the body language is hidden and technical issues can interfere with communication quality. Employees must find ways to build rapport and demonstrate empathy through digital channels that weren't designed for nuanced emotional expression. But technology isn't just challenging our emotional intelligence. It's also changing how we develop these skills in the first place. Young people who grow up communicating primarily through smartphones and social media may have fewer opportunities to practice reading facial expressions, interpreting vocal tones, and managing face-to-face social situations. The immediate feedback loops of digital communication, where messages can be edited before sending and difficult conversations can be avoided through strategic delay, may not prepare people for the real-time emotional navigation required in direct human interaction. Social media presents particularly complex challenges for emotional intelligence development. These platforms are designed to generate engagement through emotional reactions, often amplifying anger, outrage, and polarization because these emotions drive more clicks and comments. The curated nature of social media presentations can create unrealistic comparisons and undermine authentic self-awareness. The absence of immediate emotional feedback from others can encourage people to express themselves in ways they would never consider appropriate in face-to-face interaction. However, technology also creates new opportunities for emotional intelligence development when used thoughtfully. Video conferencing, when used skillfully, can actually enhance certain aspects of emotional communication by allowing people to focus more intensely on facial expressions and vocal tones without the distractions of full body language. Digital collaboration tools can help teams develop shared emotional awareness by making group dynamics and communication patterns more visible and trackable over time. Online learning platforms can provide access to emotional intelligence training and development resources that would otherwise be unavailable to many people. The key to maintaining emotional intelligence in a digital world is developing what researchers call hybrid communication skills. This means becoming intentionally more explicit about emotional content in digital communications. Instead of assuming others will interpret your tone correctly, you might say something like, "I want to share some feedback, and I hope you'll hear this as supportive rather than critical." Instead of sending a brief directive, you might acknowledge the person's efforts and explain your reasoning. Video calls require their own set of emotional intelligence adaptations. Because people can only see your head and shoulders, facial expressions and vocal tones become even more important for conveying emotional information. Making eye contact with the camera rather than the screen helps create a sense of connection. Being more animated in your expressions and gestures can compensate for the limitations of the video format. Taking time for informal conversation at the beginning of meetings can help maintain the relational foundation that supports effective collaboration. Perhaps most importantly, people with high emotional intelligence in the digital age recognize the limitations of technology and make deliberate choices about when to use different communication channels. They understand that complex emotional conversations are often better handled through phone calls or video chats rather than text messages. They know that building new relationships typically requires more face-to-face or video interaction than maintaining established relationships. They're strategic about using digital tools to enhance rather than replace human emotional connection. The future workplace will likely require what we might call digital emotional intelligence, the ability to build trust, demonstrate empathy, resolve conflicts, and inspire others through primarily digital channels. This isn't about becoming less human in our interactions, but about finding ways to express our full humanity through technological mediums. The organizations and individuals who master this balance between technological efficiency and emotional connection will have enormous advantages in our increasingly digital world. They'll be able to maintain the human elements that make work meaningful while leveraging technology to expand their reach and impact. Part 17. The Future of Human Connection. Imagine a world where emotional intelligence is as fundamental to education as reading and mathematics, where organizations routinely measure and develop emotional capabilities alongside technical skills, where leaders are chosen based on their ability to understand and inspire others, not just their analytical abilities or industry knowledge, where conflicts between individuals, communities, and even nations are resolved through sophisticated emotional understanding rather than power struggles. This isn't utopian fantasy, it's the direction we're heading as humanity begins to recognize emotional intelligence as one of our most crucial capabilities. The research trends suggest we're at a tipping point in how society values emotional intelligence. The World Economic Forum has identified emotional intelligence as one of the top 10 skills needed for the future workforce. Educational systems around the world are beginning to integrate social and emotional learning into their core curricula. Businesses are investing billions of dollars in emotional intelligence training and development programs. Healthcare systems are recognizing the connection between emotional skills and physical health outcomes. These aren't isolated trends, they're part of a fundamental shift in how we understand human potential and effectiveness. Artificial intelligence and automation are accelerating this shift by taking over more and more tasks that require pure cognitive processing. As machines become better at analysis, calculation, and even complex problem-solving, the uniquely human capabilities become more valuable. Creativity, empathy, emotional regulation, relationship building, and inspirational leadership are things that artificial intelligence cannot replicate, no matter how sophisticated it becomes. This means that people who develop strong emotional intelligence will have increasing advantages in a world where human and artificial intelligence work together. The integration of neuroscience and technology is opening up new possibilities for emotional intelligence development that we're just beginning to explore. Brain imaging technologies are becoming more accessible and affordable, potentially allowing people to receive real-time feedback about their emotional and social brain activity. Virtual and augmented reality systems could provide safe environments for practicing difficult emotional situations and receiving immediate feedback on your responses. Biometric monitoring could help people become more aware of their physiological stress responses and learn to regulate them more effectively. But perhaps the most exciting development is the growing understanding of emotional intelligence as a learnable skill rather than a fixed personality trait. This shift in perspective is empowering millions of people who previously believed they were just naturally bad at emotions or relationships. Neuroplasticity research shows that our brains can literally rewire themselves to become more emotionally intelligent throughout our entire lives. This means that no matter where someone starts, no matter what their background or previous experiences, they have the capacity to dramatically improve their emotional capabilities with proper training and practice. Educational systems are beginning to recognize that emotional intelligence should be developed alongside traditional academic subjects. Schools that implement comprehensive social and emotional learning programs see improvements not just in student behavior and relationships, but also in academic performance, creativity, and long-term life outcomes. Students who learn emotional intelligence skills early carry these capabilities into their careers, relationships, and eventually their own parenting, creating positive cycles that benefit entire generations. The business world is also transforming as leaders recognize the bottom-line impact of emotional intelligence. Companies with emotionally intelligent cultures consistently outperform their competitors in productivity, innovation, employee retention, and customer satisfaction. As this competitive advantage becomes more obvious, we can expect to see emotional intelligence becoming a standard requirement for leadership positions, a key factor in hiring decisions, and a central focus of professional development programs. Healthcare is beginning to integrate emotional intelligence into treatment approaches for everything from depression and anxiety to cardiovascular disease and immune system disorders. The connection between emotional regulation and physical health is becoming impossible to ignore, leading to more holistic approaches that address both emotional and physical well-being simultaneously. Preventive healthcare may increasingly focus on helping people develop emotional skills that protect against stress-related illness and promote overall resilience. Perhaps most importantly, we're seeing the emergence of what researchers call collective emotional intelligence. This is the ability of groups, organizations, and communities to understand and manage emotions at a systemic level. Cities are beginning to consider the emotional well-being of their residents in urban planning decisions. Organizations are measuring and managing their emotional climate as carefully as they track financial metrics. Political leaders are recognizing that effective governance requires understanding and responding to the emotional needs of their constituents, not just their rational interests. The global challenges we face, from climate change to economic inequality to international conflicts, require unprecedented levels of human cooperation and understanding. These challenges cannot be solved through technology or policy alone. They require the kind of empathy, collaboration, and emotional wisdom that comes from widespread emotional intelligence. As more people develop these capabilities, we create the foundation for addressing complex problems that have previously seemed intractable. However, realizing this potential will require deliberate effort and investment. Emotional intelligence won't develop automatically just because we recognize its importance. It requires systematic education, ongoing practice, supportive environments, and cultural changes that value emotional skills as highly as technical competencies. It requires leaders who model emotional intelligence, organizations that reward it, and communities that cultivate it in their members. The future of human connection depends on our collective willingness to develop emotional intelligence as a core human capability. We have the knowledge, the tools, and the understanding to create a more emotionally intelligent world. The question is whether we'll have the wisdom and commitment to make this vision a reality. The stakes couldn't be higher, because in a world of increasing complexity and technological power, our ability to understand and connect with each other may determine not just our success, but our survival as a species. Part 18. Your Personal Action Plan. All the knowledge in the world about emotional intelligence means nothing without action. You could understand every theory, memorize every research finding, and appreciate every benefit. But until you begin actively developing these skills in your daily life, nothing will change. The good news is that you don't need to wait for perfect conditions, extensive training, or someone else's permission to begin this journey. You can start building your emotional intelligence right now, today, with simple practices that require nothing more than your attention and commitment. Let's begin with the foundation, developing real-time emotional awareness. Starting tomorrow morning, set 3 random alarms on your phone throughout your day. When each alarm sounds, pause whatever you're doing and take 60 seconds to check in with yourself emotionally. Ask these specific questions. What am I feeling right now in my body? What emotions am I experiencing and how intense are they? What might have triggered these feelings? Don't try to change anything, just notice and name what's happening inside you. This simple practice will begin training your brain to recognize emotional patterns before they take control of your behavior. Create an emotional vocabulary that goes beyond the basic happy, sad, angry, and scared. Most people use perhaps a dozen words to describe their entire emotional experience, but researchers have identified more than 300 distinct emotional states. Each week, learn 5 new emotion words and practice using them to describe your experiences more precisely. Instead of saying you're stressed, you might discover that you're actually feeling overwhelmed, anxious, frustrated, or pressured. The more precisely you can identify your emotions, the more effectively you can manage and learn from them. Begin practicing the pause technique immediately. The next time you feel a strong emotional reaction beginning, especially anger, frustration or anxiety, commit to taking 3 deep breaths before you respond in any way. During those breaths, remind yourself that emotions are information, not instructions. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? And how can I respond in a way that serves my long-term goals rather than just my immediate impulse? Start paying closer attention to the emotional signals others are sending. In your next 3 conversations, focus more on how people are saying things than on what they're saying. Notice their tone of voice, facial expressions, body posture, and energy levels. Practice reflecting back what you observe. I notice you seem a bit tired today, or you sound excited about this project. This simple acknowledgement of others' emotional states will immediately improve your relationships and make people feel more understood and valued. Develop your empathy through perspective-taking exercises. When you find yourself in conflict with someone or struggling to understand their behavior, try this mental exercise. Spend 5 minutes imagining their background, pressures, fears, and motivations. What might be going on in their life that you don't know about? How might this situation look from their perspective? What needs or concerns might be driving their actions? This doesn't mean you have to agree with everyone, but it will help you respond more skillfully to different viewpoints. Create a feedback-seeking habit. Once a week, ask someone who knows you well for specific feedback about your emotional impact on others. You might ask, how do I come across when I'm stressed? What's one thing I could do differently to be more effective in meetings? When do you see me at my best emotionally, and what's different about those times? This external perspective is crucial for developing accurate self-awareness and identifying blind spots you can't see yourself. Begin managing your physical state as part of your emotional intelligence practice. Your emotional regulation abilities are dramatically affected by factors like sleep, nutrition, exercise, and stress levels. Make sure you're getting adequate sleep, eating regularly, moving your body daily, and having some form of stress relief practice. When your physical needs are met, your emotional intelligence capabilities increase significantly. Start practicing emotional contagion awareness and management. Before entering any social situation, take a moment to check your own emotional state and make a conscious choice about what energy you want to bring to the interaction. If you're feeling stressed or negative, take a few minutes to regulate yourself before engaging with others. Remember that your emotional state will influence everyone around you, so managing it is a service to others as well as yourself. Develop specific scripts and strategies for common challenging situations. Think about the interpersonal situations that consistently cause you difficulty. Giving feedback, managing conflict, dealing with criticism, or having difficult conversations. Research and practice specific techniques for handling these situations more skillfully. Role-play with friends or family members, or practice your responses in front of a mirror until they become more natural. Create environmental supports for your emotional intelligence development. Surround yourself with people who model good emotional skills and who support your growth in this area. Read books, listen to podcasts, or take courses that continue to develop your understanding. Join groups or communities where emotional intelligence is valued and practiced. Make your environment work for your development rather than against it. Set specific, measurable goals for your emotional intelligence development. Instead of vague intentions like, be more empathetic, commit to specific behaviors like, I will reflect back what I hear in at least one conversation every day. Track your progress and celebrate improvements, no matter how small. Emotional intelligence development is a gradual process that requires patience and persistence, but consistent small efforts create dramatic changes over time. Most importantly, approach this development with curiosity and self-compassion, rather than criticism and perfectionism. You will make mistakes, have setbacks, and discover aspects of yourself that are uncomfortable or challenging. This is part of the process, not evidence that you're failing. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would show a good friend who is learning something difficult. Your emotional intelligence journey is a lifelong adventure, not a problem to be solved quickly. Every step you take makes you more effective, more connected, and more fulfilled as a human being. Part 19. The transformation that awaits. Let me paint a picture of what your life could look like 6 months from now if you commit to developing your emotional intelligence. You wake up in the morning with a clear sense of how you're feeling and what you need to have a good day. Instead of rushing into reactive mode, you take a few moments to set your emotional intention for the day ahead. You feel more in control of your inner experience and more confident in your ability to handle whatever challenges might arise. At work, you notice that people seek you out for advice and collaboration more often. Meetings run more smoothly when you're involved because you can sense tension before it escalates and help guide conversations toward productive outcomes. When conflicts arise, instead of avoiding them or letting them fester, you address them directly but skillfully, often helping resolve issues that have been bothering people for weeks or months. Your manager and colleagues see you as someone who makes everything work better, and opportunities for advancement begin presenting themselves naturally. Your personal relationships transform in ways that surprise you. Conversations with family members become deeper and more meaningful because you've learned to listen with genuine curiosity rather than just waiting for your turn to talk. Instead of getting caught in the same old argument patterns, you can recognize when discussions are heading toward conflict and guide them toward understanding and resolution. People tell you that they feel heard and valued when they talk with you, and your relationships become sources of energy and joy rather than stress and obligation. You develop what feels like a superpower, the ability to read rooms and situations with remarkable accuracy. You can sense when someone is struggling even if they haven't said anything, allowing you to offer support before problems become crises. You can tell when groups are ready to make decisions and when they need more discussion. You understand the unspoken dynamics in social and professional situations, giving you the ability to navigate complex interpersonal landscapes with confidence and skill. Your stress levels decrease significantly, not because your life becomes easier, but because you develop much more effective ways of managing challenges. Instead of being overwhelmed by difficult emotions, you experience them as information that helps you respond more skillfully. You learn to stay calm in situations that used to trigger intense reactions, and you develop resilience that allows you to bounce back from setbacks much more quickly. People around you notice your stability and find themselves feeling calmer and more confident when you're present. Your decision-making improves dramatically because you learn to integrate emotional and rational information effectively. Instead of making choices based purely on logic or purely on feeling, you develop the ability to consider both cognitive and emotional factors in a balanced way. You make fewer decisions you later regret, and you feel more confident in your choices, because they align with both your rational analysis and your deeper values and intuitions. Your leadership abilities emerge naturally whether or not you hold formal leadership positions. People naturally look to you for guidance because you demonstrate emotional stability, wisdom, and genuine care for others' well-being. You become skilled at inspiring and motivating others, not through manipulation or pressure, but by helping them connect with their own values and potential. You create environments where people feel safe to be vulnerable, take risks, and contribute their best thinking. Your physical health improves as you learn to manage stress more effectively. You sleep better because you're not carrying the emotional residue of unresolved conflicts and unmanaged stress. Your immune system functions better because chronic stress hormones are no longer constantly flooding your system. You have more energy because you're not wasting it on interpersonal drama and emotional reactivity. Perhaps most importantly, you develop a deep sense of authenticity and self-acceptance. As you become more aware of your own emotional patterns and triggers, you stop trying to be someone you're not and start becoming more fully who you really are. You learn to acknowledge your limitations and mistakes without harsh self-judgment, while also recognizing and celebrating your strengths and growth. This authentic self-knowledge becomes the foundation for genuine confidence and inner peace. Your ability to influence others increases exponentially, but in ways that serve everyone involved. Instead of trying to manipulate or control people, you learn to understand what motivates them and help them achieve their own goals in ways that also serve your objectives. You become someone others trust and want to work with because they know you genuinely care about their success and well-being. Your influence comes from integrity and competence rather than position or power. You discover that emotional intelligence creates a positive feedback loop in your life. As you become more emotionally skilled, you attract relationships and opportunities that support further growth. People who appreciate emotional intelligence gravitate toward you, while those who prefer drama and dysfunction tend to move away. Your environment becomes increasingly supportive of your continued development and success. Most remarkably, you begin to see how your personal emotional intelligence development ripples out to benefit countless other people. Your children learn emotional skills by watching you model them. Your colleagues become more emotionally intelligent by working with you. Your friends feel safer being vulnerable and authentic because of how you respond to them. You realize that developing emotional intelligence isn't just personal improvement, it's a contribution to making the world a more emotionally healthy and connected place. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it isn't always smooth or linear. But every step you take toward greater emotional intelligence creates measurable improvements in your effectiveness, relationships, and life satisfaction. The person you could become with well-developed emotional intelligence may be more capable, more fulfilled, and more influential than you currently imagine possible. The only question is whether you're ready to begin the journey. Part 20. Your Emotional Intelligence Legacy. As we reach the end of our journey together, I want you to imagine something profound. Picture yourself 20 years from now, looking back on the decision you're about to make today. In one version of your future, you set this knowledge aside, returning to the familiar patterns of emotional reactivity, relationship struggles, and missed opportunities that characterize so many lives. In another version, you choose to embrace the challenge of developing emotional intelligence, transforming not just your own life, but the lives of everyone you touch. The research we've explored together isn't just academic theory. It's a roadmap to human flourishing that has been validated by thousands of studies and millions of real-world experiences. We've seen how emotional intelligence affects every aspect of human existence. Your career success, your relationships, your physical health, your mental well-being, and your ability to contribute meaningfully to the world around you. We've discovered that these skills are learnable, measurable, and within reach of anyone willing to commit to the journey of development. But perhaps most importantly, we've uncovered a truth that extends far beyond personal benefit. Your emotional intelligence doesn't just change your life, it changes the lives of everyone in your sphere of influence. Every conversation you have with greater emotional awareness creates the possibility for deeper connection. Every conflict you handle with skill rather than reactivity models a better way of being human. Every moment you choose empathy over judgment, regulation over reaction, and understanding over assumption, you're contributing to a more emotionally intelligent world. Think about the people who have influenced your life most profoundly. Chances are they weren't necessarily the smartest or most successful people you've known. They were the ones who understood you, who helped you feel valued and capable, who remained calm in crisis and wise in complexity. They were the ones who demonstrated emotional intelligence in action. Now imagine being that person for others. Imagine the legacy you could create through your emotional presence and skill. We live in a time when humanity faces challenges that cannot be solved through technology, policy, or intellectual analysis alone. Climate change, inequality, political polarization, and social fragmentation all require unprecedented levels of human cooperation, understanding, and wisdom. These challenges demand the very skills that emotional intelligence develops: the ability to see beyond our own perspectives, to find common ground across differences, to manage our emotions in service of larger goals, and to inspire others toward collective action. Your journey toward emotional intelligence is therefore both deeply personal and profoundly universal. You're not just working on yourself, you're developing capabilities that our species desperately needs to navigate the complexities of the modern world. Every person who commits to this development adds to our collective emotional wisdom and resilience. Together, we can create the kind of world where human potential flourishes, where relationships thrive, and where our best impulses guide our choices. The path ahead won't always be easy. Developing emotional intelligence requires confronting uncomfortable truths about yourself, changing long-established patterns and persisting through setbacks and frustrations. There will be moments when you question whether the effort is worth it, when old habits seem easier than new growth, when the vulnerability required for authentic connection feels too risky. These moments are not obstacles to your development. They are opportunities to demonstrate the very courage and commitment that emotional intelligence requires. But you won't walk this path alone. Around the world, millions of people are recognizing the importance of emotional intelligence and committing to their own development. Organizations are changing their cultures, schools are transforming their curricula, and communities are prioritizing emotional health alongside physical and economic well-being. You're joining a movement that has the potential to reshape human civilization by changing how we understand and manage the most fundamental aspects of our humanity. Remember that every expert was once a beginner, every master was once a student, and every person with exceptional emotional intelligence was once exactly where you are now. They didn't possess special gifts or advantages, they simply made the choice to begin and the commitment to persist. They understood that emotional intelligence isn't a destination you reach, but a way of being that you develop throughout your entire life. Each day offers new opportunities to practice, learn and grow in your emotional capabilities. The time for action is now. The knowledge exists, the tools are available, and the need has never been greater. Your emotional intelligence journey begins with a simple choice. The choice to pay attention to the emotional dimension of your life with the same care and intentionality you bring to other important areas of development. It continues with small, daily practices that gradually build into transformative capabilities. And it flourishes through your commitment to using these skills not just for personal benefit, but in service of creating a more emotionally intelligent world. Years from now, when someone asks you what was the most important decision you ever made, I hope you'll be able to say it was the decision to develop your emotional intelligence. Not because it made you more successful, though it probably will. Not because it improved your relationships, though it certainly will. But because it helped you become the fullest, most authentic, most connected version of yourself. Because it allowed you to contribute to something larger than your individual success. Because it helped you live a life of meaning, impact, and deep human connection. The invitation is before you. The journey of emotional intelligence awaits. Your transformation, and through it, the transformation of everyone you touch, can begin today. The only question remaining is, will you accept the invitation?